Hello everyone! I'm working on a little game in Unreal Engine. I started working on this game in January. I had some feature goals for Q1 and I have some cleanup goals for Q2. In this video, I will share the work I did in the first 3 months of this year. The end goal of this game is for me to get to know how to do a series of things in Unreal Engine and just get a feel for what can be accomplished with the engine and the tools available to me. I'm planning to put it on itch.io around mid-June. Additionally, all of the code and blueprints in this project are available on GitHub. I don't plan to take this particular project further than that, though I do plan to build a similar game, probably multiplayer, and use many or all of the features I built. So this game is based on a Udemy course called Unreal Engine 5 C++ Ultimate Game Developer Course by Stephen Ulibarri. It's a single-player course for UE5 and walks through the basics of setting up characters, interacting with weapons, basic mob AI, and dealing damage to and killing mobs, among many other things. I highly recommend this course if you want to learn UE5, and it frequently goes on sale for very reasonable prices. I finished that course in late January and started extending the game into a bigger game with more features. I'll talk through those features, but I want to mention that a lot of them have little bits missing functionality or missing sounds, animations, or particle effects. So if you see something and think it doesn't look quite right, I have probably noticed already and will fix it in Q2. So I started by revamping the item system. I chose to have all items in a data table and to create an inventory component which is given to the player. I set up an inventory UI and implemented a series of basic inventory functionality, including displaying existing items and the amounts of those items in the correct inventory slot, giving the user the ability to throw those items on the ground, as well as dragging and dropping them from slot to slot. I implemented containers and allow the user to move objects from their inventory to the container and vice versa, both by the keyboard and by dragging and dropping with the mouse. And I made items stackable. Users can pick up items on the ground and see those items in their inventory. As an extension of inventories, I created a merchant. Each merchant object has an array of items they sell and an array of items they purchase. This was mostly UI work, though I prefer keeping the logic in code and display in blueprints. I actually have gone back and considered writing a backing C++ class for the merchant, but I found it to be impractical. Most of the logic in this widget blueprint is around displaying items on the front end. You can sell items. You see the gold you have up here, and you can buy items. And you see that the items you purchased now exist in your inventory. Some items have uses. I've implemented 2 types of uses so far: equipping, like equipping a weapon, and direct use. Direct use is simple. In my inventory data table, there is information about what happens when an item is used. In the case of potions, these items grant health or stamina. Health and stamina are actually both items in the data table as well, although they're handled by the attributes component instead of the inventory component. But abstracting the difference between those components away allows me to have one item grant another item, and when the add item function is called in the code, it's that function that uses this is attribute value to determine whether to tell the inventory or the attribute component to update itself. There may be other kinds of uses in the future. I imagine that clothing or armor would be a particular type of use, and food may also be a different type of use, although I could see food being set up as a direct use item as well. You'll notice this pause as the player uses the item. This is because in the future I want each item to have an accompanying animation. So when the item is used, the animation will be played, and at the end of the animation, the finish item use function will be called. But until that's implemented, I simply set up a timer and call finish item use when the timer completes. Moving on from items, I have these objects in the world called landscape resources. They can be interacted with and put an item in the user's inventory when they're used. Each object has an animation and an item ID they give, as well as an amount of that item ID, although both of my resources that are currently set up are set to an amount of 1. Once they are used, the resource is destroyed. This is the beginning of a resource gathering system, which is part of a larger crafting system that I'd like to build out. And eventually, I'd like to extend this to trees and other objects that can be picked up. By the way, I created 2 spawner types for these. One spawner type is a big box that I placed on the landscape. I define the box size and how many of this item will spawn, and then I use a line trace to place the item on the ground. At runtime, the spawner randomly places the items. The other spawner is one that has a specific location, so you have to take the spawner and place it in the world manually. And then there's a percent chance that the item that you've chosen will spawn. These raspberry items are spawned by the first type of spawner, and these ore nodes are spawned by the second. I created the spawners because I was curious about how to do it and to see which type worked better. Overall, I like them both, and they're both useful in different situations. As for spawners, I also created an enemy spawner. These enemies have the ability to patrol from point to point, but the way it works is if I place an enemy down in the world as I'm building out the world, I must then manually create patrol points and choose the patrol points for the enemy, which is tedious. So I created this spawner, which spawns a random enemy based on the set of enemies I choose, then separates the space around the enemy spawn location into 4 quadrants. It then places one patrol point in each quadrant using the line traces to make sure the point is placed on the ground. It adds the patrol point to the enemy. Super simple and straightforward. The next feature I added was leveling up. When the user opens their inventory, it also opens the level up panel. You can see here that the user is always told on screen what level they are and how far along they are to the next level. In the panel, they see the number of souls they need to reach the next level, and when they have enough souls, the level up button is available. Ideally, increasing your level will increase the damage you do, but that's not set up yet. You'll notice these pots in the scene here. These are finicky creatures, so although they exist, I don't put much store in them. They're breakable objects using the chaos system, something we learned in the course, and they drop random loot. Sometimes when spawning, though, they'll simply straight up explode. So yeah, more work to do there. They're actually spawned using the same resource spawner as the ore nodes, by the way, so each pot has about a 75% chance to spawn. The items they drop can be sold to the merchant. Finally, to tie this all together, I built a very basic quest system. There are a lot of different ways a quest system could work, but I chose to create a new subsystem, and each object that is wanting to notify the event system of an event happening would simply get that subsystem and call a function on it. I came up with a list of actions I wanted to capture and made an enum out of them. I got each class calling the event system where necessary, and then I set up a delegate on the event system. I created a quest component and gave it to the player character. That quest component is the meat of the quest system. The events subsystem is just a collection point for all events. The quest component binds to the event subsystem's delegate, and then it has this function which does the correct thing based on the current state of quests. Because in the future, I don't want the user to have a bunch, or really any quests, I didn't spend time on details I wouldn't need. For example, I haven't bothered with a quest log. I don't think this would be able to display multiple quests if I added multiple quests, and I don't have any mechanism for users to pick up or cancel quests. My goal with the system was to build a tutorial quest that would guide the user through the basics of gameplay, and when finished with the quest system, the user could continue playing the game with the information they learned. So I set up the one tutorial quest manually in the constructor of the quest component. Each quest has an array of objectives, and each objective has an objective type. As the user advances through the objectives, the old objective is removed from the screen, and the new objective is displayed on screen. Those are all the features I implemented in the first 3 months of this year. All my code is on GitHub, linked in the description of this video, and the many, many improvements I still need to do are in progress this quarter. I've been demoing everything on this example map, so let me show you how this would work in a more real-looking world I built. All right, this is already a long video, so let's get started. First thing is to pick up the sword that I am not doing, but it's right here. So let's equip that. I happen to know that later it's going to ask me to get 200 gold and that I'm going to need some copper nodes for that. But first, let's kill a couple enemies. These guys, not really worth it. They don't sell for a whole lot. So let's get our second enemy. Enemy AI is also something that I plan to improve. Just not quite good enough. So, although I did kill 2 enemies, I happen to know that stags only drop 1 soul each. That's just not enough. Eh. I would like to change hit reacting, I think, to where the enemy only hit reacts. I hope these guys don't see me. If the user does a certain amount of damage to them, maybe a certain percentage of their health, because they're reacting all the time, and that kind of, it allows you to stun lock them. Not so good. How much ore do I have? 3. Let's get the 4th one. First, we can level up. Now it wants us to find the merchant. Find materials, sell them to the merchant. And the merchant is up here. These are pack level actors, by the way. The merchant is one thing I'm gonna fix. This is everything in the array of things that the merchant will buy, but it doesn't actually limit the list to what's in your inventory and doesn't show in any way how much you have in your inventory. So you just click on crown and click sell and it just doesn't do anything. So that's going to get fixed up. So having, by the way, got 200 gold. Or sorry, it wants me, I sold stuff to the merchant, now it wants me to get specifically 200 gold, which is why I was getting all that copper. So now I have that, and it wants me to purchase the Doombringer. Let's get that. Now it wants me to kill the boss. Let's get some stamina potions first. And I happen to know that the boss is down here. See how he just misses me? What kind of boss fight is that? Oh man. Level up twice. Sweet. Alright. That is that quest done. The whole quest thing has gone away now, and thank you for watching the video.